Hi, I'm Crystal Hurd, and welcome to my channel, That Lewis Lady. Happy February and happy Black History Month. I'm so glad to be back with you guys today. It is my inaugural first channel book haul. I'm so excited to share it with you. So I've got a lot of really neat stuff here, some from overseas, some from Book of the Month. So let's dive in. This is Good Dirt by Charmaine Wilkerson. You may remember her from her first novel, Black Cake. This one sounds so interesting. It says, when 10-year-old Ebby Freeman heard the gunshot, time stopped. And when she saw her brother Baz lying on the floor surrounded by the shattered pieces of a century-old jar, life as Ebby knew it shattered as well. The crime was never solved, and because the Freemans were one of the only black families in a particularly well-to-do enclave of New England, the case had an enduring voyeuristic pull for the public. The last thing the Freemans want is another media frenzy splashing their family across the papers. But when Ebby's high-profile romance falls apart without any explanation, that's exactly what they get. So Ebby flees to France, only for her past to follow her there. And as she tries to process what happened, she begins to think about the other loss her family suffered on that day 18 years ago. The stoneware jar that had been in their family for generations, brought north by an enslaved ancestor. But little does she know that the handcrafted piece of pottery held more than just her family's history. It might also hold the key to unlocking her future. That sounds amazing. And there were so many great books this month. But I've got to tell you, this next one also, I'm very excited. If you stick around with the BookTube a while, you'll know this author had a great book called The Snow Child earlier. And this is Blackwood Blue Sky by Owen Ivy. Birdie's keeping it together. Of course she is. So she's a little hungover on her shifts. She has to bring her daughter to the lodge while she waits tables, but Emmeline never goes hungry. It's a tough town to be a single mother, and Birdie just needs to get by. And then Birdie meets Arthur, who's quieter than most men, but makes her want to listen, who is gentle with Emmeline, and understands Birdie's fascination with the mountains in whose shadow they live. When Arthur asks Betty and Emmeline to leave the lodge and make a home, just the three of them, in his off-the-grid cabin, Birdie's answer in a heartbeat is yes. Out in the Alaskan wilderness, Birdie's days are harsher and richer than she ever imagined possible. Here she will feel truly at one with nature, yet here with Emmeline will learn the whole fearful truth about Arthur. That's pretty incredible, yeah. And so that one I had to pick up too. And then we have a brand new debut that was here that I saw. I had read about it. I actually looked at it online. And then when it was on Book of the Month, I had to snatch it up. And that is Penitence by Kristen Covell. When a shocking murder occurs in the home of Angie and David Sheehan, their lives are shattered. Desperate to defend their family, they turn to small-town lawyer Martine Dumont for help. But Martine isn't just legal counsel. She's also the mother of Angie's first love, Julian, a now successful New York City criminal defense attorney. As Julian and Angie confront their shared past and long-buried guilt from a tragic accident years ago, they must navigate their own culpability and the unresolved feelings between them. Spanning decades from the ski slopes of Colorado to the streets of post-9/11 New York and back again, Kristen Covell's debut novel is an examination of the complexities of familial loyalty, the journey of redemption, and the profound experience of true forgiveness. That sounds pretty amazing. And there's a couple debuts on this list that I'm so excited about. But this next one, as soon as I saw this on Book of the Month, I squealed. I was so excited. I have several books by this author, and one of my favorites, he's usually had a top book on my list for the last 2 or 3 years. And it's pretty wild that it was on Book of the Month. It is The Bones Beneath My Skin by T.J. Klune. So excited for this. There's nothing more human than a broken heart. In the spring of 1995, Nate Cartwright has lost everything. His parents are dead. His only brother wants nothing to do with him, and he's been fired from his job as a journalist in D.C. With nothing left to lose, he returns to his family's summer cabin outside the small mountain town of Roseland, Oregon, and tries to find some sense of direction. The cabin should be empty, but it's not. Inside is a man named Alex, and with him is an extraordinary 10-year-old girl who calls herself Artemis Darth Vader. Artemis, who isn't exactly as she appears. Soon it becomes clear that Nate must make a choice, let himself drown in the memories of his past, or fight for a future he never thought possible. Because the girl is special, and forces are descending upon them who want nothing more than to control her. That sounds pretty awesome. Under the Whispering Door is one of my absolute favorite books, so I'm very excited. This is a very different take for TJ Klune, but I'm sure he'll do an awesome job with it because he's a fantastic writer. And speaking of debuts, like I mentioned earlier, here's a new one coming up as well. This is Andromeda by Therese Bowman. The publishing house is anchored like a ship along Stockholm's main street, a large, bright building with impressive rooftop terrace. The facade is a grid of wood and granite. Flags with the cursive R sway in the wind. R is in write-ins. A young woman starts as an intern in this venerated institution and over many years gains more and more responsibility for its authors and books. All under the supervision of Gunnar, publishing director of the most prestigious imprint behind the finest literature, Andromeda. Over time, their work relationship transforms into something neither of them can truly define. Perhaps built on mutual trust? Or is it something else? Pretty impressive for a debut, I think. And I'm really excited to read that and see what is up. And I do have a few little romance and contemporary fiction in here. And this one was all over BookTube, all over Book Talk. So when I saw it on Book of the Month, I went ahead and picked it up because I just couldn't help myself. It just sounds so interesting. It's The Favorites by Lane Fargo. If you're an ice skating fan, you will love this book. To the world, they were a scandal. To each other, an obsession. She might not have a famous name, funding, or her family support, but Katerina Shaw has always known that she was destined to become an Olympic skater. When she meets Heath Rocha, a lonely kid stuck in the foster care system, their instant connection makes them a formidable duo on the ice. Clinging to skating and each other to escape their turbulent lives, Kat and Heath go from childhood sweethearts to champion ice dancers, captivating the world with their scorching chemistry, rebellious style, and roller coaster relationship, until a shocking incident at the Olympic Games brings their partnership to a sudden end. As the 10-year anniversary of their final skate approaches, an unauthorized documentary reignites the public obsession with Shaw and Rocha, claiming to uncover the real story through interviews with their closest friends and fiercest rivals. Kat wants nothing to do with the documentary, but she can't stand the thought of someone else defining her legacy either. So after a decade of silence, she's telling her story. From the childhood tragedies that created her all-consuming bond with Heath to the clash of desires that tore them apart. Sensational rumors have haunted their every step for years, but the truth may be even more shocking than the headlines. Wow. So that sounds really neat. And it kind of reminds me of Daisy Jones and the Six, because this is sort of a mixed media type of book, which has interviews and different types of media other than straight prose. So I'm really excited to see if this is a lot like Daisy Jones and the Six, and to see what happens with their relationship. It sounds really interesting. The next one is from the powerhouse, Richard Powers. You guys, he is an incredible author. I've read a couple of his books, love them. And this one is continuing his focus on climate change. 4 lives are drawn together in a sweeping panoramic new novel from Richard Powers. 12-year-old Evie Bellew sinks to the bottom of a swimming pool in Montreal, strapped to one of the first aqualungs. Ina Arwada grows up on a naval bases across the Pacific with art as her only home. 2 polar opposites at an elite Chicago high school bond over 3,000-year-old board game. Rafi Young will get lost in literature while Todd works will lead to a startling AI breakthrough. They meet on the history-scarred island of Makedia in French Polynesia, where deposits of phosphorus once helped to feed the world. Now the tiny atoll has been chosen for humanity's next adventure. A plan to send floating autonomous cities out into the open sea. But first, the island's residents must vote to greenlight the project or turn the seasteaders away. Set in the world's largest ocean, this all-filled book explores that last wild place we have yet to colonize in a still unfolding oceanic game, and interweaves beautiful writing, rich characterization, profound themes of technology and the environment, and a deep exploration of our shared humanity in a way only Richard Powers can. Sounds amazing. He is always a great author to read. So this next one is also a debut, and I've already read it because I just couldn't help myself, and that is The Artist by Lucy Steeds. I actually read an article on this book. The author is a very young graduate in Europe. She took a year to write this book and said, if I can't sell it in a year, then I'll go back and work a regular job and just toss my dreams away. But sure enough, she had that book sold within a year, and a bidding war actually struck out for it. This book, I've already read it, is a 5-star. It is amazing. And here is your summary. The year is 1920. The place is a remote farmhouse in Provence, home to the reclusive painter Edouard Tartuffe and his niece Eddie. In this strange, silent house walks a young journalist hoping to write an article about Tartuffe. But the more he entangles himself in the peculiar household, the more Joseph's curiosity grows. Eddie cooks and cleans for her uncle. She prepares the studio, scrubs her paintbrushes, and creates the perfect environment for him to work. She has never gone farther than the local village. She is sharp-eyed and watchful, but beneath her cool exterior, Joseph senses something simmering. Eddie, Joseph, and Tartuffe circle each other throughout the hot, crackling summer until they finally collide. That book is amazing. Unfortunately, it's not available in the U.S. yet. It is only available in the U.K., so I ordered that from Blackwell's. If you are interested, Blackwell's has free international shipping, and you can order it there, but I highly recommend this book. It was very enjoyable. And so the next one, every booktuber had to buy it. I rode the hype train. I bought the meal ticket on everything on this, and this is Onyx Storm. I don't need to explain it to you. It's got dragons and people who ride dragons, and it is a huge sensation right now on the interwebs. Seriously, you've been under a rock if you didn't know this book was coming out. I did pre-order this book almost a year ago, and I do have the special sprayed edges, and I also have it on Kindle as well. So I'm really excited to read this. I haven't got to it yet, but I will soon. And for all the dragon girlies, this is your next installment. You have to wait another year and a half before the next one comes out. My apologies on that. So pretty good. Who doesn't love Rebecca Yarros, right? So next we're going to dip into some modern classics here. I haven't read this book yet, but Books Are Sick and some other folks had talked about this book on their channel, so I had to get it, especially this edition. This is Stoner by John Williams, called the perfect novel by so many people. William Stoner is born at the end of the 19th century into a dirt-poor Missouri farming family. Sent to the State University to study agronomy, he falls in love with English literature and embraces a scholar's life. So different from the hard-scrabble existence he's known, and yet as the years pass, Stoner encounters a succession of disappointments. Marriage into a proper family estranges him from his parents, his career is stymied, his wife and daughter turn coldly away from him. A transforming experience of the new love ends under threat of scandal. Driven even deeper than within himself, Stoner recovers the stoic silence of his forebears and confronts an essential solitude. John Williams' luminous and deeply moving novel is a work of quiet perfection. William Stoner emerges from it not only as an archetypal American, but as an unlikely existential hero, standing like a figure in a painting from Edward Hopper in a stark relief against an unforgiving world. That book, I've had so many people tell me, is the perfect modern novel with words like that. Who doesn't have their curiosity piqued? So I'll check that out and let you guys know what I think about Stoner. Next one is a romance. I've already read this one, gave it 4 out of 5 stars. This is Deep End by Allie Hazelwood, who likes to write STEM romance novels. Scarlett is swimming upstream, a junior at Stanford and a student athlete who specializes in platform diving. Scarlett prefers to keep her head down, concentrating on getting into med school and on recovering from the injury that almost ended her career. She has no time for relationships. At least that's what she tells herself. Swim captain, world champion, all-around aquatics golden boy Lucas thrives on discipline. It's how he wins gold medals and breaks records. Complete focus with every stroke. On the surface, Lucas and Scarlett have nothing in common until a well-guarded secret slips out and everything changes. So they start an arrangement, and as the pressure leading to the Olympics heats up, so does their relationship. It is supposed to be just a temporary, mutually satisfying fling, but when staying away from Lucas becomes impossible, she realizes her heart might be treading into dangerous waters. So yes, I read every book by Allie Hazelwood except her fantasy. I've always enjoyed them. They're nice, sort of easy reads for me, and I always enjoy it. She does a really great job in romance. And the next one here is, I'm so excited for this one, is called Water Moon by Samantha Soto Yamboa. On a back street in Tokyo lies a pawn shop, but not everyone can find it. Most will see a cozy ramen restaurant, but only the chosen ones, those who are lost, will find a place to pawn their life choices and deepest regrets. Hana wakes on her first morning as the pawn shop's new owner to find it ransacked, the shop's most precious acquisition stolen, and her father missing. And then into the shop stumbles a charming stranger, quite unlike all its other customers, for he offers help instead of seeking it. Together, they must journey through a mystical world to find Hannah's father and the stolen choice by way of rain puddles, rides on paper cranes, the bridge between midnight and morning, and a night market in the clouds. But as they get closer to the truth, Hannah must reveal a secret of her own and risk making a choice that she will never be able to take back. That premise sounds incredible. Not only is this book beautiful, even the naked hardback is beautiful, but the premise that you can go to a pawn shop and sell your regrets is just a really interesting concept. So I'm really excited to read that one. Now, our next one is not a recent release, but came out a few years ago. This is The Last of Her Kind by Sigrid Nunez. You may recognize that name because she wrote the book The Friend, which won the National Book Award, I think, in 2018, which now is a movie with Naomi Watts. That's coming out pretty soon. And I would love to go see that. It sounds awesome. I've read the book a few years ago and really enjoyed it. Now, this one is a really interesting concept. It's Columbia University, 1968. Anne and Georgette meet as roommates on their first night. Anne is rich and radical. Georgette is leery and introverted, a child of the very poverty and strife her new friend finds so noble. The two are drawn together by their differences 2 years later. After a violent fight, they part ways. When in 1976, Anne is convicted of killing a New York cop, Georgette comes back to their shared history in search of an explanation. She finds a riddle of a life shaped by influences more sinister and complex than any of the writ large 60s movements. She realizes, too, how much their early encounter has determined her own path and why all this time, as she tells us, I have never stopped thinking of her. Really interesting female friendship there, and sort of the socioeconomic differences that define their relationship and continue to influence their relationship even after it ends. Now, the next three here are from Nobel Prize winner Han Kang. Just recently, I'd already read The Vegetarian and enjoyed it. It was a 4-star for me. This right here is the Waterstones edition of The Vegetarian. I don't know if you've heard the premise of this, but it is very interesting. Before the nightmares began, Young and her husband lived an ordinary, controlled life. But the dreams, invasive images of blood and brutality torture her, driving Young to purge her mind and renounce eating meat altogether. It's a small act of independence, but it interrupts her marriage and sets into motion an increasingly grotesque chain of events at home. As her husband, her brother-in-law, and sister each fight to reassert their control, Young obsessively defends the choice that became sacred to her. Soon, their attempts turn desperate, subjecting first her mind, then her body to ever more intrusive and perverse violations, sending Young spiraling into a dangerous, bizarre estrangement not only from those closest to her, but also from herself. Celebrated by critics around the world, The Vegetarian is a darkly allegorical, Kafkaesque tale of power, obsession, and one woman's struggle to break free from the violence, both without and within her. It is a great novel. It actually is not narrated by the main character. It's narrated by everyone else in the novel, which is an amazing concept because then you see how other people interpret her decisions that she wants to make with her own body. Very interesting. Now, this next one is also really interesting. I haven't read this one yet, but is on my list. This is Human Acts. Amid a violent student uprising in South Korea, a young boy is shockingly killed. The story of this tragic episode unfolds in a sequence of interconnected chapters as the victims and the bereaved encounter suppression, denial, and the echoing agony of the massacre. From Dong-ho's best friend who meets his own faithful end, to an editor struggling against censorship, to a prisoner and a factory worker, each suffering from traumatic memories, and to Dong-ho's own grief-stricken mother, and through their collective heartbreak and acts of hope, is the tale of a brutalized people in search of a voice. An award-winning controversial bestseller, Human Acts is a timeless, pointillist portrait of a historic event with reverberations still being felt today, by turns tracing the harsh reality of oppression and the resounding extraordinary poetry of humanity. Hung Kang always uses things like this. She talks so much about oppression and the body and harm and power and politics. They're always so great. So the very last one I want to talk about today is her brand new release, and this is also the Waterstone Special Edition. This is We Do Not Part. I have already read this. It was a 4 out of 5 stars for me too. Basically, a friend is contacted, and her other friend is in the hospital, and says, I need you to go to my house and feed my bird. And she has to go through a snowstorm. In between those are scenes, because her friend in the hospital is a filmmaker of all these different interviews that she has done with people who have lived through traumatic war experiences. So this very simple act of the bird is juxtaposed with all these sort of harmful, dangerous, terrible scenes and memories of people who have been through very traumatic things. So it's a great book. It's basically her vibe. I mean, she writes very similar in all the books she writes, but they're always very thought-provoking and amazing. And you guys, that concludes my book haul for today. I'd like to do another one with Kindle, but I think I've rattled on long enough. So I'm so excited. Again, I've already read 2 or 3 of these, but I'm really excited to sort of read and see what happens and how I like these. Check out my Goodreads if you want to know what I thought so far. And then, hey, if you're interested in any of these, visit me in the comments and we'll start a chat. Thanks, guys, for tuning in. I love you, and I hope you have a great day.